Hi. I just wanted to, first of all, say I'm sorry that I couldn't be there to deliver this paper in person. Um, I appreciate being able to do this via technology, and I just want to give you a heads up that I did end up editing this video a couple of places, because my dog apparently thought that I was talking to her and responded in a few places, so I had to edit her out. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this with you. It's been argued that the field of child and youth care is founded on a relationship. Generally, this relationship has been posited as being between two identifiable subjects, a worker and a child or youth. In the professional writing about the field, the quality of the relationship and the practices associated with various and sometimes contradictory views of what constitutes quality have been elucidated and examined. The identities and ethical compositions of the subjects involved have been scrutinized, and proposals have been made about what kind of child or youth worker might maximize the relational aspects of care. Indeed, practice standards, ethical codes, and professional training have been developed and deployed to produce an optimal worker who will, in turn, have a relationship that will produce an optimal child and/or youth. Within the set of practices and descriptions, there have been some key theoretical perspectives that I would argue frame and support the child and youth care relational project. Amongst others, key conceptual frameworks would consist of theories from developmental psychology, humanism, and phenomenologies. Each of these in turn have been focused on the individual human subject as the central interest of child and youth care. In this paper, I'm going to argue for both a different theoretical framework and a significant rethinking of the human individual as the central player in a relation of care. As a feminist psychologist with a background in youth work, I've long been troubled by the ways in which the developmental tasks of the child or youth have been framed within a series of binary either-or conceptualizations. Some of these include child and adult, child and adolescent, male and female, gay and straight. Several feminist theorists, such as Erica Berman, Rosie Braidotti, and Bracha Ettinger, amongst others, have argued that these binary formations are derived from a specifically masculinist point of view. They would argue that the male gaze is constructed on what Lacanian psychoanalysts term the logic of the phallus. In phallic logic, the father's body is the ideal body against which all other bodies are measured. Since the father in question was historically a white male body, lack is defined as any body that is not white and male. This has had serious historical implications for anybody who lacked the attributes ascribed to the Great White Father. This would include women, of course, but also all people of color and non-heterosexual subjects as well. This latter group because of a perceived feminization of their sexuality. While this might be argued as old psychoanalytic theory that doesn't really apply to the emerging field of evidence-based care, I would suggest that it continues to have a profound impact. I would point to the fact that, developmentally, children are still perceived as lacking adult maturity and decision-making capacity, that girls must continue to find ways to integrate themselves into a male-dominated social structure, and that feminism and female-centered approaches are still marginalized in child and youth care. And finally, that race, sexism, homophobia, and power relations remain of marginal concern in much of our training curricula. Training hierarchies of power and discipline remain the standard for structuring our institutions, and disciplining young people to adapt to a male-dominated social structure is still the goal of most programming. However, more significant than any of these concerns for me is the pervasive conceptualization of lack as a driving force in our work. Even the most progressive work on girls, race, and homophobia tends to advocate for these identities on the basis that they lack access to dominant structures of privilege and domination. In other words, we've not yet developed a politics of care focused on difference as a source of social transformation. I would argue that the process of phallocentrism constitutes a social diagram that favors centering particular attributes and identities in order to give them social force. For example, the anthropocentric positioning of the human as the central concern of social justice has marginalized all other life as of secondary concern. The results of this can be seen right now in contemporary events as species become extinct, as the environment becomes increasingly toxic, and catastrophic events such as hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, oil spills, nuclear accidents, and tornadoes become more commonplace events. The binary logic that separates humans from their environment, children and adolescents from adults, gays from straights, and men from women, is increasingly dangerous, and its two central identities, human and male, may well be finished as useful social forms. The field of child and youth care may be one of the places where we can begin to challenge these binary forms and rethink the rule of developmentalism and humanism. In this, we might begin to propose a new phenomenology of the subject that frames experience not as a function of the individual, but as the lived experience of life itself as manifested through the human organism as a part of a much larger whole. One way that we might approach this is to consider theoretical approaches to care that are not premised in either binary formations or phallic logic. This would mean exploring theories of care that would be inclusive and multiple in orientation. It would also imply the decentering of any particular form of life in favor of the politics of life itself. In recent writings on feminist thought, several authors have proposed what they have termed nomadic feminism. This work focuses on developing a theory of the human organism that no longer centers it in a binary with nature. Instead, they suggest that the human organism, as Berdodi states, is neither wholly human as a person nor just an organism. It is an abstract machine, radically immanent, which captures, transforms, and produces interconnections. To understand this, let's break down a section at a time. The first idea is that the human organism is larger than any description we can give of it. When we say it is human, we accept a set of definitions that limits the organism to certain concepts of what it is to be human, such as what it is to be a person. A person, in this sense, is separated from other persons by the boundaries of the human body and also by what we term to be the personality and social identities associated with the person. The person as a human is separated from animals and nature, and in some schemas, purported to be in charge of nature, or in another version, a steward of nature. In some, thinking nature is there to be used by the person or human for his or her own purposes. These descriptions have what Deleuze and Guattari call an ordering function. They suggest that these descriptions order the world by telling us what our place is in it. It also orders the world by telling us what our behavior should be. For example, a human is superior to animals and should either care for them or exploit them for food, clothing, entertainment, etc. Therefore, human is not an animal and mustn't behave like an animal. Think about how much of this kind of thinking drives our interventions with young persons in terms of teaching them how to behave like human beings and not animals, how to take advantage of their environment and to seek to control their circumstances. In this sense, then, the description given of what it means to be human and to center the human outside nature is what nomadic feminists would call an abstract machine. That means a way of producing, the way a machine would produce a subject, as an abstract set of ideas. It can be quite disorienting to begin to think this way because it challenges so much of what we take for granted and value. The proposal is that the human organism is simply a description. The idea of the human is simply that, an idea. The supposed fact that it is a discrete organism is again just another abstract idea. It could be argued that it is an idea with tremendous force that captures us and produces us in ways that limit our creative possibilities as an expression of life itself. However, we are also told that such a machine produces interconnections. If these interconnections occur on the field of life itself, then the human organism might be said to have far greater capacity than just that originating within itself. But what is life itself, and what does it have to do with care? To understand this, we need to understand life as encompassing everything, including the form we call the human organism. Such a system that includes everything is called an immanent form. It is a system that has nothing outside of itself, and so everything is an expression of it. The concept of immanence has received recent attention in feminist writings by scholars and psychoanalysts such as Ettinger, Brododi, as I mentioned earlier, as well as Moira Gatens and Genevieve Lloyd. Gatens refers to immanence in her writing on feminism as a kind of experimental project that has the force to elude dominant forms of social control as nature conceived as immanently self-governed. It is nature without an outside sovereign force to define or order it. Drawing from both Deleuze and Spinoza, she states that it is a form of ontology that is monistic and inclusive rather than disjunctive. In other words, nothing is excluded and all aspects of nature are mutually productive. Gatens reads Spinoza as conceiving of the human body as a part of an interconnected web of life in which each body holds its difference from other bodies in terms of its singular attributes of intensities and composition. The human body is what Spinoza calls a complex body composed of a multiplicity of other bodies. Such a body, Gatens tells us, can never be viewed as a final or finished entity. It is a nexus of variable interconnections, a multiplicity. This multiplicity of bodies together is composed according to their ability to express their idiosyncratic and singular capacities. In this sense, an immanent system focuses on the given capacities of any composition of bodies rather than on a sense of lack. Immanence is therefore composed of what exists rather than what does not. Included in this, however, are all virtual forms as well as instantiated forms. Accordingly, immanent systems are constantly assembling and reassembling the component bodies so as to express the infinitude of virtual possibility. The body, therefore, is an ongoing experimental site of virtual expression.